Welcome to the Ag Inspo podcast, where we delve into the dynamic world of agriculture, uncovering the stories that inspire, empower, and drive change. Join hosts Rena Striegel and Rabou as they explore the journeys of farmers, entrepreneurs, and leaders who are making a difference as they navigate the critical work of transitioning their operation to the next generation. From navigating family dynamics to developing the next generation of ag leaders, we'll bring you the insights and inspiration you need to thrive in today's ever-evolving agricultural landscape. So whether you're a seasoned industry veteran or just starting out, get ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered as we learn from best practices and a few colossal failures on the Ag Inspo podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Ag Inspo podcast. I am so excited today because we're going a little different direction today. As you guys know, we always try to find interesting and inspirational things that are happening in agriculture. And I am so excited today that I have Chad and Addi Drury here with us today to talk about their ranch, which is the Nothin But Try Ranch, which I love the name, and their bucking bulls that are featured in the PBR. And Addi is kind of the star of their social media. She is out handling them and raising them and training them and doing some very cool things with the bulls. And I know that over the past few years, it just seems like there's been this increased excitement about bucking bulls and the PBR and rodeo in general. So we're super excited to hear all about the things that are going on at their ranch in Oklahoma. But before we get into that, Ron, hi, how are you?
Hey, I'm totally awesome today. We have a Wyoming blizzard going on, which means no snow and just wind.
Perfect. That was the same report that you gave us the last time that we did the podcast. So I'm happy to hear that things are status quo for you in Wyoming.
Well, you know what? Things don't change. We don't like change, and we're just going to go with the flow. It is what it is. We got a little bit of snow this morning, but now it's just windy. So, and you are not at home. You are on the road because you're trying to escape Iowa's blizzard, from what I understand.
Yeah, just trying to get ahead of it, trying to get where I'm supposed to be.
Gollies, yeah, no kidding, right?
Yes.
Well, it's I was admiring the blue, the brown, the yellow, and the white colors in the background. I mean, apparently you're staying in a classy place, so this is good news.
Holiday Inn all the way. Nothing but the best.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Well, I do know already in just our brief little discussion that we had with Chad and Addi ahead of time that Chad and I share one thing for sure in common, and that is that we live in windy parts of the world.
That is
so we're already off to a great start, right, Chad?
Absolutely, that is a fact.
Oh, well, Chad and Addi, why don't you introduce yourselves and tell us the story of Nothin But Try Ranch. I am excited to hear how you got into this particular part of agriculture. And Addi, I really am excited to hear about what's going on with you.
All right, well, I can start. I'm Chad Drury with Nothin But Try Ranch. We are based in Eric, Oklahoma. And I know you mentioned that you like the name of our ranch. Well, a little backstory on that is I grew up in South Dakota. I have two brothers, Jesse and Shane. And Shane and I both rode bulls, and we were extremely close. And Shane actually made the NFR in bull riding in 2000. Then he was diagnosed with cancer, and he ended up passing away in 2006. And him and I, before he passed away, we were going to raise bucking bulls together because you can only ride bulls for so long. And you don't, when you're done rodeo and riding bulls or anything with any type of sport, you kind of just want to stay involved with it. So, well, Shane had cancer. He was done rodeo, and I was done as well. And it's like, hey, let's just start raising bulls. We were going to do it together. And then he ended up passing away. And one thing about Shane, when he was riding bulls, he had nothing but try, and he never let go. He tried his guts out every time he nodded his head in life and in the arena. So that's how we named our ranch in honor of my little brother, Nothin But Try. So,
wow.
And we've been in the bucking bull business close to 20 years now. And it's been a big blessing. And to have Addi along our side from day one, since she's been big with this, and this is something that she grew up doing. But one thing that we do is whatever Addi wanted to do, our job as parents, I feel, is to fuel whatever passion that they have, and it's just a blessing to us that the bucking bulls is her passion. So it just makes it so great where when we go up and down the road to all the PBRs across the country, she travels with me. So she homeschools, and she's my travel partner. And then Jenny, our wife, she goes as much as she can, but she likes to stay home and make sure all the babies and everything's taken care of here. So
Excellent. The divide and conquer method. I love it.
And I'll let Addi tell you about her little story that kind of really got her heavily involved with it. Her bull named Hard Labor. So she can tell you about him from the beginning.
I'm Addi Drury, and I have a bull named Hard Labor who was a bottle calf. His mom she was a first calf heifer, so she's never had a calf before, and she didn't accept him at birth. So, and we bottle fed him for a while, and then we bucked him, and he was pretty good. And then in June of 2022, he got injured. He shattered his hock, so he wasn't able to buck anymore. But he made the PBR finals in May of 2022, and he's just a big baby, and just he's been through a lot. And initially, the vets told us that they could, like, just to put him down, just be done with it. But he's my best friend, and I couldn't do that. And now he's doing really good. He's sassy and just lives his best life.
I love it. I love it. Mm-hmm. So, Addi, I have to ask, you are how old?
I'm 14 years old.
You are 14 years old, and you are standing right on the front line of this industry. And, I was especially happy that you could be on the show today, because Ron and I both are huge advocates for succession planning in agriculture and making sure that the next generation is coming behind. And so I was super excited when your dad said that you were going to come on and talk about your role on the ranch and your part in the business. So I'm really excited that you're here, and I'm really excited that you could save that bull, because they are bulls. So I'm assuming you've got some little babies out of him, that you've got the next generation of his line that's coming up, I'm assuming.
Yes, we have 5 calves out of him so far, 3 heifers and 2 bulls, and we've bucked the bulls, and they're going to be pretty good, we think.
Nice.
One thing Addi didn't mention is with Hard Labor, like, they grew up together. She would play with him. They would play chase. She would run up and down the alley chasing with him. When she was in regular school, she would, right out of school, she'd go check on him with the nurse cow, and we'd catch her taking naps with him in the pen with him, and they were like laying with him with, his head in her lap, and they just had an amazing bond. And usually with bottle caps, and pretty much a lot with the bucking bulls, it kind of takes the fire out of them. So usually, if they're bottle caps or a nurse cow, they're just kind of what we call deadheads, is they're probably not going to buck. Well, I had made Addi the promise that no matter what, we're always going to keep him, because she was so attached to him. So we actually bucked him the first time, and he was really, really good. And then she junior fraternity with him. And then actually with a rider, he was even better. And he was actually selected to buck at the PBR World Finals in 2022. And I flanked him the first time, because you got to be 18 to flank. And then actually the second weekend, when they invited him back to buck again, they actually let Addi flank him at the PBR World Finals when it was in Fort Worth. And it was a pretty special moment, because typically you got to be 18 to be behind the buck and shoots, just for insurance reasons. But a 12-year-old little girl, flanking and actually bucking off one of the best bull riders going down the road at that time, it was pretty special. So
nice. I wonder if you would like, we're in middle America row crop land, right? Not a lot of bucking bulls and things like that happening. I wonder if you wouldn't mind just explaining a little bit about the breed itself, in terms of, how these bulls are different than, an Angus bull that we might have running around in a pasture in Iowa.
Well, the American Bucking Bull Incorporated is actually a registered breed for bucking bulls. And it's actually, I think, the 3rd largest cattle registry in the world. So, and to make a long story short, they're mutts, basically. They're a little bit of this and that and everything. And, basically back before the registry, people would go to the sale barn and they'd buck some and they'd be Bramer cross. And if they bucked great, then the ones that really bucked, they'd breed to some crossbred cows. And if their cows, if they had a bull calf that bucked, they would remember what cow it was, then breed her to more. And then you would see that the genetics played a big role in it as it progressed. So now with the bloodlines, I mean, most of ours are 8, 9, 10 generations deep with, proven bucking heritage in their bloodline. So, with that being said, I mean, if you breed a bull that bucks to a cow that's produced a bucker, there's a good chance you're going to get a bull that really bucks. So it's just like racehorse, and they're just because they're bred to run don't mean they're going to run very fast anyways. So, I mean, the genetics is very important in it, but it also has to do with, how you handle them as calves and just with their development. And some catch on, some don't, but there's usually always a job for some of them, whether it be, junior rodeos or the PBR and anything in between. Or, some bulls that aren't quite the PBR level, we'll sell to fellow bull riders that are going up and down the road for practice bulls. Some guys don't want the big, mean, elite PBR bulls to practice on. They just want some, that are really easy to handle and not mean, because sometimes they'll practice at home without any help other than a brother or something. So something that's not going to try to run them over and kill them when they get off. So, but there's a job for everything, but the genetics is important. So, but yeah, no, they're pretty much mutts. I mean, from the start. So they're a little bit of everything.
Well, I'm gathering that there's not there must not be a correlation between the meanness, I guess, for lack of terminology, in a bull versus its ability to be a good bucking bull, because your Addi is cuddling up to these things and riding them around just like they're a horse, just about. But you take them out and you flank them in a rodeo, and they, are some of the best buckers that are out there. And so what's the, like, I don't understand how you breed a bull that has a gentle personality and one that bucks and like blend it all into one thing and make that work.
Well, they're bred to buck. I mean, that's in their genetics. And, with them handling, like when they're at home, they know they're not working, so you almost see two different sides. They're almost like a split personality. So when they're at home in their pen, a lot of them are, very, very docile, easy to handle. Like when we go to feed, we got to push them out of the way. But when we load them up and take them to an event, even at the bull housing, they're fine. But when we unload them and they put them in them back pens at the arena, they know it's time. You load them in that buck and shoot. They know it's time to go. They got a little bit of fire to them. So, and we have several bulls at the arena. When the rider gets off, they'll run them down, or they'll try to. They got a little bit of meanness to them and a little bit of fight. But at home or before, I mean, you'd never guess it.
So almost like a dog, like you can actually train them to just do their job. And then when they're at home, they can relax and they just take on a different personality. Oh, that's absolutely amazing. I didn't know that.
And a lot of the calves, I mean, we spend a lot of time with them out in the pasture when they're babies. They'll come up to us and to create that trust and that bond with them. But even when we go to handle them and start training them as calves, they got a little bit of spunk to them, a little bit of snortness to them. But really, what we say, you can haul it out of them for the most part. Like, they're really wild. I mean, but the more you haul them and the more they're on that trailer going to event, they're going to eventually settle down and just kind of relax a little bit. And like Addi does a lot of the fraternities with her 2-year-olds. They buck with a 16-pound box on their back that's a remote control, a latch where you can, after they buck for 4 seconds, you press the button and the weight comes off their back and they're judged for that 4 seconds of bucking. Well, when we start them, they're pretty much, pretty high strung and worked up. And it just takes, sometimes they don't buck as well because they're wore out from fighting the buck and shoot, or just so antsy and just haven't really settled down. And the more you haul them, they get better and they'll settle down. They're easier to load and unload, and they're not trying to wreck panels. And, they'll just settle down into where, when you get them to the rider stage, they've kind of been hauled a little bit as fraternity calves. And then they just, you kind of get a handle on them. Just like a horse when you're training them, there for a while, you build that trust. And they just got to get used to it. They're creatures of habit. So the more you do things, you kind of get used to it and figure it out. But when you put them in that buck and shoot, they know it's time to go to work. They're a different animal.
They definitely are athletes. One of the things that I have really noticed in, just in watching the rodeos and, watching some of your videos is that these bulls they don't have an ounce of fat. They kind of just ripple with muscle. Talk about just like the protocols that you have. And if you like, obviously no trade secrets need to be told on this podcast, but, like talk about just the business of preparing these bulls because they are scored as well as the rider. So how do you kind of work your bulls into the position where they're scoring really well and they're kind of the bulls that show well? Because a lot of the rodeo is kind of the show of it all.
Yeah, well, I mean, either they buck or they don't. That's as simple as it is. But our job is to really get the best out of them, and the ones that with their breeding, we have a pretty good percentage of ones that do good with the small cow herd that we have. But with the nutrition side of it, we really feed a higher protein, lower fat feed, so we can build on the muscle and we're not really poorly fat like you would like something you're going to go to butcher, try to fatten them up, to butcher. And we don't do that. It's really a low fat feed to really keep them hard and have that muscle and being in shape, and be strong enough to really perform. And then Addi exercises her bulls daily when it's not 60-mile-an-hour wind outside. She'll move around with the four wheeler, or if we got bulls that are penned up, we'll let them out in our what we call an exercise pen with a big dirt mound to hook to play around and trees to rub on and just run and play and buck and just stretch their legs. So, but really the nutrition is very important to us. It's good hay, good mineral, and good feed.
Yeah. Addi, tell us about your part in the business. I mean, obviously, we see you doing a lot of different things, but what do you feel like is your favorite part of the business that you're in?
I mean, my favorite part's going to all the PBRs, but what I usually do, like with my side, like I usually handle all the calves for my junior fraternities and just work with them. And since the junior fraternities, I can only flank them, so we'll buck them at home a lot and just see like which ones I can enter and which ones we just need to turn out and wait for riders and just whatever we need to do with them. Like one of my calves, Campio, he was 90 the other day at an event, but then he wasn't very good the next. So we bucked him at home and we're trying to figure out like what was wrong with him. And we think the dummy was too tight, and he did a little bit better, but we're just going to figure out what's wrong with him.
Yeah. So you might have to explain to everybody what flanking actually means.
Basically, flanking it's basically like tightening up a belt around your waist. That's all it is. It's just a cotton rope that we just put it around their in front of their hips, and just some is tighter than others. We just tie it off, and really it doesn't hurt them. It's a cotton rope, and basically all they're trying to do is kick it off. Bulls will buck without a flank, but it's like letting the air out of a balloon. They'll kind of drag their butt and just not be very desirable to ride. But when you put a flank on them, it makes them kick. And it helps with their timing, and it makes them actually buck harder for the show. So, but it absolutely doesn't hurt them whatsoever.
Yeah. So the cool thing about you guys getting to do the flanking is that what each bull kind of requires to get the best show out of them, more or less.
Yeah, absolutely. And
yeah.
That's the biggest deal. Is some bulls that you just have it tied up to where it won't fall off, and other bulls that seem to be you have to have a little bit tighter. So you have to figure out every bull, and it's not easy. A lot of them are pretty similar, but they're every bull's different. Small bulls typically tend to not have as tight of a flank, but it just depends on what they like. So, and just we do what we can to get the most out of them. So it's our job to figure it out. Buck them at home as calves and just trial and error and just figure out what works best for which ones. And the same with the delivery. You'll see bulls buck on the left side versus the right side. And it's whichever one. Some bulls, typically, if they spin left all the time, we're going to buck them on the left side so they spin right out of the chute. But some bulls buck better at a different side. So it's our job to kind of figure out the best of that bull and then just go from there.
So, Chad, if you would take us back to the days when you started riding bulls, because I mean, I love going to PBR events because I mean, it's pretty fun, you know. I mean, it's quite the entertainment, and I love it. You know, of course, we have that here at Cheyenne Frontier Days, and we usually try to go to that every year. And um, but my question is always this: when I'm at a PBR event, I'm like, what in the world possesses a person to want to sit on a bull and try to see if they can ride it? Like, I just don't understand that. So, like, take us back to, you know, like what was it in you that said, yeah, I think I want to do that?
Well, it's we grow up in it, you know. And my dad used to rodeo, and we had some land, you know, when I grew up. And then we had horses. We did the roping events, and we would, you know, start, you know, getting on, you know, calves and steers, and just something that we didn't know any different. You know, like if you ask me to jump an airplane, I'm going to say hell no. I think that's stupid. But you know, bulls, like when I grew up doing it, you know, it doesn't seem. I mean, we know it's dangerous, but if it's something that it's always been a part of you and your lifestyle, it doesn't seem, it's just normal to us. So, and I can see people from the outside can think how crazy it is, but once you know, spend time, you know, behind the scenes with what we do and you can see it, it kind of gives you a whole different perspective of it. So, but now it's like when you grow up doing it, doesn't seem dangerous. And then a lot of people just do it based on dares, and they'll see the adrenaline rush that they're going to get from it. It's pretty amazing. I know Chad Ochocinco, the wide receiver for the Broncos or for the Bengals, he mouthed off saying he was going to get on a bull, and this was actually during a PBR, and they put him on a PBR bull, and he got on, and he didn't ride but 2 jumps. I think Ty Murray was involved with his training to kind of help get him. He never got on a bull before then, but kind of helped going through the drills and showing him what to do and all this stuff. And he actually got on, and he rode about a jump and a half, and he about got stepped on, and it gave him a new appreciation for the sport. When he's like, man, he's like, these guys, I think he said when they interviewed him afterwards, he says, these guys need to be the highest paid athletes, period. He said, there's nothing even close to what this is.
Yeah.
So, but
I think that's what people don't understand when they look at rodeo as an event. I mean, it doesn't matter what event you're in rodeo. You have to be an athlete, and you have to be in shape unlike any other. I mean, and certainly it's, you know, if you're riding a bronc, or if you're riding a bull, or if you're bulldogging, or even roping, I mean, there's so much skill that's required in that, and so much athleticism. I mean, I remember when we were branding when I was growing up that, you know, my dad would always throw me on a calf at the end of branding, and I lasted about, you know, a half of a second. And then, you know, of course I got too big to do that, but I can see, I mean, it's just kind of like all of us who are in agriculture, right? Like it's inherent in us. And some of us are attracted maybe more to, you know, riding in tractors and playing it a little more safe. That would be me. And some of us are more inclined to hop on a bull, and other people are inclined to jump out of an airplane, and it doesn't bother them a bit, but they couldn't imagine probably getting on a bull. They would think that that's crazy. So I guess it does take all of us. It's just amazing to me that those guys are willing to do that. And what are I mean, obviously the risks are substantial, right? Like if you're going to ride a bull, I'm assuming that the chances of you getting hurt pretty bad are significant. Is that true? Or how do you deal with that?
Yes and no. I mean, if you notice, like when bulls buck, I mean, they can see almost directly behind them. They have a very good sense of awareness of where their feet go. So if you watch bull riding, there's a lot of really close calls within inches. Like bulls when they're bucking, they want to land sure-footed. They're not trying to stomp you when they're landing. And a lot of times when most of the injuries happen when guys get bucked off underneath the bull and the bulls step on them. Well, and if you watch, there's a lot of close calls. I'm talking within inches. Well, bulls they want to land safe. So they're not trying to deliberately land on you. Sometimes it doesn't, but if they can see where you're at, they're not gonna step on you on purpose. They're gonna run you over and throw you in there if you in front of them, and that typically doesn't hurt the guy. It's usually when they get stepped on with the bull's back legs. And most of the time they're not deliberately doing that. When that people think they are, but they're not. And it's dangerous. I mean, absolutely. But one thing that sets bull riding and rodeo apart from any other sport is it's performance based. There's no guaranteed money. If you don't win, you don't get paid. So even in the roping, the barrel racing, the bull riding, any sport with rodeo is if you don't win at that rodeo, you're not getting paid. Now with the PBR, they have the PBR teams coming on where they're helping, where there are some guarantees, to help financially a little bit. But for the most part, if your team doesn't win, you're not going to make as much money. So with bull riding and rodeo in general, outside of endorsements with sponsors of the like, if you don't win, you're not getting paid. Boxers are get a guarantee. Football players, you can not ever see the football field beyond practice squad. You're getting paid. So not with rodeo. If you don't win at that rodeo, you're not going to get paid. But you have all the expenses.
So Addi, I have to ask you, are you a rider as well as a trainer and a?
No, I'm not. I just like to handle the bulls. I've never really wanted to try to ride one. I mean, it's just not something I'm interested in.
I won't allow it.
No, I've noticed that there's quite a few women riders now that are kind of making the scene and making a name for themselves. So I just wondered if Addi, you had caught the fever.
Yeah, that's not happening. She did ride a sheep once, and we stopped it after that. So she can jump on triple out in his pen and be a bull rider that way. Outside of that, no.
Well, I think that looks like a pretty fun way to be a bull rider, is just to jump on them in their pen when they're chilling out and let them take you around. I think that's a good way to do it.
So, Chad, I'm curious. Have you brought your bulls up to Cheyenne Frontier Days then?
Several years ago, when it was the CBR event before the PBR started doing the bull riding, we took 1 year. We did because it was the CBR bull team finals during the CBR finals that year, and we were actually up there one time. And during the PBR, when it was just the timing doesn't work for us because we have 3 or 4 of our really good bulls are on cows at that time. So we didn't have enough to really take them to justify going. So,
well, there was the tragic event, obviously, that is kind of world renowned, I would say, with Lane Frost being, killed in action at Cheyenne Frontier Days. And that was, I'm sure, just a part of circumstances. It's just probably part of the risk that you take when you're riding a bull. Was that kind of it seems like maybe it was a little bit more of an anomaly than what you might expect to ever see in something in that situation. I mean, guys aren't getting killed doing this, but certainly that was a pretty unfortunate thing that happened with him.
That with Lane Frost getting killed kind of helped change the sport in aspects of safety, because back then they didn't wear helmets or safety vests or anything like that. And Cody Lambert, who was one of Lane's best friends and traveling partners, because Lane actually got hooked, and he got, when he was on the ground, that bull just went to run him over and just hit him with a horn, and it punctured, it just broke a rib and it punctured the lung, and he died. Well, Cody Lambert actually helped. He actually invented it and designed a vest to wear to help absorb that impact and prevent that from happening. So now the bull riders wear a safety vest. So if that exact same situation happened, the vest is going to take most of the brunt force, and you're not going to get hurt. It could crack a rib, but it's not going to break a rib and it just puncture a lung like it did with Lane, because he had no safety. He just wore a Western shirt. So that was a really freak deal. It actually helped, revolutionize how the safety aspects of the sport. So, and the vest that Cody Lambert helped design and invented has been a game changer with the safety of the bull riders. And now helmets are mandatory. I'm not sure what year. I want to say if you were born after 1995, around that range, it's actually mandatory at the PBRs, because for high school rodeos, it's mandatory. So they say, look, you guys are growing up wearing a helmet. If it was mandatory and you're in high school, you guys have to keep on wearing it. So most of the boys are wearing helmets. There's some that don't, and they're the older guys that just don't want to. Rodeo, it's some do, most of them still wear helmets, but it's not a requirement. So some guys don't. But I mean, you'll see a lot of them. It's dangerous. So.
Mm-hmm. Now, are they required to wear the vests also?
I don't know if they are. I don't think they are, but they'd be stupid not to nowadays.
Right. Well, there's quite I don't know if you've seen it. There's quite a bronze statue of Lane Frost at the Cheyenne Frontier Days grounds. It's a pretty significant story that happened here. Aaron Watson, the country artist Aaron Watson, wrote a song called July in Cheyenne, specifically about Lane Frost. And man, it is a super touching song. I would encourage everyone to tune into that, because that is Aaron Watson, July in Cheyenne, is a really heartfelt song about that particular thing that happened. But, it's interesting how when things like that happen that are unfortunate, that those who are left behind can really look at the situation and say, we got to make this better. We got to prevent this from happening again. And I'm not so sure an accident like that since that time has happened. Not that I'm aware of, at least.
No, most of the time, to my recollections, the people that ended up getting killed, they got stepped on in the head. That's pretty much most of it. I mean, there's some other things that happen, but most time it's if they'll get stepped on in the head. And now, shoot, I can't remember I don't even personally know someone in recent memory that's been killed riding bulls. It's been a Mason Lowe. Shoot, that was 5 or 6 years ago. And I'm sure there's been some people at some local deals that I'm not aware of. But for the most part, I mean, I think with the helmets and the vests, it's actually saved a lot of lives for sure. So
that's pretty awesome.
It's been a lot of broken bones still, and it's a rough sport. I mean, we always say in the PBR, it's typically the best boy that stays the healthiest is who's going to be the world champion. So there's a lot of elite guys that have the best shot at winning a title. They'll end up getting hurt, and they miss part of the season. And they're trying to play catch up. So it's typically the healthiest guys are the guys that have the best chance to win.
So, out of curiosity, Addi, what's the highest rank rider that one of your bulls has tossed?
Probably, I mean, we've had our bulls buck off. Jose, John, Brady Fielder. I mean, it's just sometimes they like the bulls, like especially with John Crimber, the bulls didn't do what they were supposed to do. They went the other way, which they typically, both the bulls, Triple and Haymaker, they both typically go left, but with him they went right.
So is that, Addi, that brings up an interesting point. So before these guys get on a bull, are they doing what athletes do in traditional sports? More like football, basketball, etc. Are they studying these bulls and watching videos so that they can prepare themselves like a football player would, as far as looking to the other team and what kind of plays they're going to run? So do they have an expectation that they set up that once that chute opens, that they're going to go a certain way? Do they kind of approach the event in that way, where they can do some video preparation ahead of time, or not?
Yeah, some don't, but it's just kind of their preference. Like some people just know, like some bulls, like for example, like Cool Whip, like they like know what he's going to do every time, but he also has tricks to him. Like that's why he had the highest consecutive buck off streak in the PBR. But then just like sometimes they can like hit themselves or like just foul themselves and they just do something different. Or like some days they like just decide to switch it up, or like if they're tired of being rode, they'll go the other way. they just kind of are smart animals.
But most of them will look it up. They'll do their homework. If it's a new bull, a lot of bullers will text me or send me a message asking me about a bull or asking me for a video. And there's actually a website called probullstats.com that keeps track of every single out of all the bulls, all their professional outs. So every bull that goes to a PBR has their own Pro Bull Stats profile. And if you click on that bull, it shows you every professional out that bull's had and who the rider was, what the bull score was, and some of them have videos attached to it as well. So they're going to look up that bull, look up their previous history, and if one of their buddies has been on, they're going to say, "Hey, what'd this bull do? Send me some video." Or if it's a new bull from a contractor, they'll reach out to the contractor and ask them for video footage, and they will. And a lot of times they overdo it. The bull riders do, because if a bull typically goes left every time, they're going to set a trap for them, and it's typically not going to go well for them because they're going to get ahead of the bull spin and just fall off. Or if a lot of bulls nowadays, with the breeding and they're really, really smart animals, they buck off a field. So if they feel a bull rider on the left more, they're going to go away from them because their job is they want you off their back. So they do whatever it takes. So some bulls have a pattern. No matter what they're going to do, they do the same thing every single time. But then the more they get rode, they get tired of it. They're going to start changing it up to get you off their back. So the boys, they're students of the game. They do their homework. So they like to know what most of them like to know what they have, and they try to find out every little detail about every single bull that they get on to kind of help give them somewhat of an advantage. So they think.
What are, you talked a little bit about changes in safety over the course of your career. What are some other, things that have changed about your industry that have been exciting or that kind of have been a challenge that you have overcome?
Oh, I don't really know many challenges. I think as a contractor, the biggest challenge we've had to overcome is the Brazilians. And we get along great with the Brazilians. They're great, but they pull their ropes super, super tight. And some of them pull it really tight and just set in the buck and shoot to try to take an edge off the bull to kind of have an advantage. So the PBR has implemented a shoot clock where if they think you've had enough time in the buck and shoot, they tell you on the clock, you got 30 seconds to get out of the buck and shoot, otherwise you get a 0. So, and really with smaller bulls, if they draw one of the Brazilians that pulls a super tight rope, them bulls aren't going to perform quite as well. So as breeders, with the Brazilians, I mean, half the bull riders at the PBR, they're Brazilian. So they pull, and pretty much even the Americans pull a Brazilian rope, and they pull a really, really tight rope. So our goal is, we got to have bulls that can handle the rope, so that are, bigger and stronger, that can take that, tightness of a rope. So, but that's just the only thing that we've really had to overcome, but it just comes with it. Some bulls can't handle it, and some it does. Like Haymaker's one of our smaller bulls. He weighs probably 1,450 pounds, and that's on the smaller side with a PBR bull, and he handles it well. And there's some bigger bulls we have that the tighter that rope goes, they start to lay down. They don't like it, so it just doesn't work for them. So our deal is you got to figure out which bulls can handle it, which ones can't. So it doesn't hurt them. It's just uncomfortable, and just like you got your belt too tight, it doesn't feel that great. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how's the competition in the industry? So, you've been in this thing for 20 years. So have you noticed over time that are there more people that are getting in and contracting bulls? Has the competition gotten, a lot stronger? And you're finding that you're having to compete with that. What's the nature of the contractors that are raising bulls? Is it highly competitive? Do you guys kind of get along pretty well and you kind of all have your niche, or kind of walk us through that a little bit also, so we can have an understanding of how that works?
Well, it is extremely competitive. It's almost like a fraternity. Pretty much everyone gets along. There's some bad apples in there, but for the most part, everyone gets along. And the sport, bull riding, has really, really come on. There's so many really good bulls out there because of the ABBI, which is American Bucking Bull Incorporated. They have actually sanctioned bull competitions where they have yearling events where all yearlings compete at a fraternity where they all buck for 4 seconds and they're judged. And they have the 2-year-old fraternity, same thing. They buck with a dummy for 4 seconds, and then they're judged. And then the 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, buck in the competitions with riders. So there's a lot. The fraternity game with the yearlings and 2-year-olds, and 2-year-olds especially, is extremely competitive. And bulls, they buck like crazy. It's really good. And you have a lot of people that pretty much only focus on the fraternity side because they don't have to deal with the bull rider part of it, where they don't have to have as many pens or as big of a setup, to handle the rider bulls. So there's a lot of really, really good fraternity calves out there, and it's every year they just seem to get tougher, and there's just so many. Shoot, I don't even know how many. I know I think in the ABBI registry, there's over 2,000 or so people that are registered that have an ABBI membership. Some are active, some aren't, but there's a couple thousand, if not more. I don't know the exact number that actually, raise bulls, and most of them just raise them to compete, or some just raise them and sell them as calves to people to go through and buck and to pick out the best ones and to compete with. We actually pride ourselves on, basically competing with bulls exclusively that we raise. So like we took 7 bulls to the Milwaukee, Wisconsin, PBR, and every one of those bulls we raised. So that was, something that we really, truly enjoy. Is just, we love the process of it from, when they hit the ground on the pasture to see their development as babies to get to the level that they're at now. It's really rewarding to us. And most people, if they're stock contractors, they basically just buy, they're always buying bulls to put us together to haul up and down the road. So, but we like to haul just the ones we raise. For us, it's more rewarding, and everyone just does something different or whatever floats your boat. But now with the ABBI and the fraternities, it's really tough. I mean, there's a lot of several 90+ point bulls out there in the fraternity game, and you see them buck. They're amazing.
What is the career length of a bull that makes it to the PBR level? Like, how long can they sustain that?
It honestly depends on the bull. One big factor is how much they were bucked at fraternities. A lot of the big PBR contractors, if they know a bull bucks really good, but if he was bucked a lot of fraternities, they're going to pass on him, because every buck him, it's basically wear and tear on that bull. So, and if you haul them all over the country, you take them to 50 fraternity events, before they're even old enough for a rider, they're already kind of going to be set back, and they won't last as long once you put a rider on. There's a select few that that it doesn't really bother, but a lot of times they just buck them so much with a dummy that they're just kind of, they don't really ever make it too far, with riders. So we try not to do that. We almost have 2 different sets of bulls. Some bulls we don't think are going to make the fraternity calves. We just turn them out and let them grow, and then we'll just start them with riders. But typically, to answer your question, most time we'll put riders on ours the first time when they're 3-year-olds, and then they'll probably, when they're 4s, when they first start going to PBRs. But 7, 8, their bulls are at their peak when they're 5 and 6. So you'll see some 7, 8-year-olds, but I think there might be one 9-year-old out there bucking on the PBR tour, and that's it. So
that is a lot older than I would have guessed.
And you have to keep in mind when you go to, because we exclusively go to PBRs. When your bull riders are facing the absolute best 35 bull riders in the world every time they go to an event, I mean, that's why like Cool Whip, like 48 or 49 consecutive buck offs, that's rare, just because of the elite bull riders he faces, every time he bucks. I mean, the odds are, it's hard. I mean, there's not an unrideable bull out there when they're facing the best bull riders in the world. They're going to eventually figure them out.
So is it better for you as a breeder and a contractor? Is there more of a financial benefit for you if those bulls consistently buck off their riders? Is that the goal?
Not really. I mean, we want our bulls to do good and have a good bull score. If they ride them, great. As long as they can ride them for a win or be close to 90 or over 90, we're happy. So, I mean, they're all, like I said, they're all going to get rode eventually. So if they do get rode, as long as it's for a good score for the rider, we're happy. Now, if we're trying to sell them, big buck offs and big bull scores is what's going to bring the big money for the bulls. So, but yeah, no, we don't. They're all going to get rode, so we don't mind them getting rode as long as it's for good scores, and the bull riders can win on them. So.
Mm-hmm.
So I know another piece of your business is that you have an event center too. So tell us about that.
Well, we actually, it would have been in 2022. We built a covered arena, and we have enough pens to house 100 bulls here. So we actually produce events on our ranch. They're more the ABBI. They're the bull competition events. We have 6 events over the summer, 3 fraternities for the yearlings and 2-year-olds, and then 3 rider events for the 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. And one thing that we do is we get, we're hustling, sponsors to, sponsor arena. We have an outgate, like Cinch is our main sponsor for our outgate. We have buck and shoot sponsors and, banner sponsors. And what we do is we commit 75% of our sponsor dollars to go back towards added money for our bulls and for our riders. So we've been blessed with, really good support, really great sponsors, and, really good talent. And with the with the 3 bull ridings we have them on Wednesday nights. And a lot of people struggle with it when they actually have a bull riding because they can't get bull riders. Well, my whole thinking is, why don't we just put on bull ridings midweek where we're not competing against every event out there for the bull riders. So Wednesday night we're competing against their job in the practice pen. So they can either, having them at night, they can, shoot. There's hundreds of bull riders within 4 hours of us, so they can either, if they are working, they can leave work, come get on, and and Wednesday nights usually when they practice, and with the added money that we have, and we have no entry fee for the riders, and they're riding for usually a $10,000 or $15,000 purse, so they're wanting to drive up here and basically get on some bulls and hopefully win instead of practicing at their house. So it's worked out good for us. So, but yeah, no, our events are good. The contractors seem to like it. The bull riders do it. They pay really good, and the competition's really tough. So the first year in 2022, they were PBR sanctioned events. So it was really neat to say that we actually had 3 PBRs in our backyard. So that was pretty exciting. So, but now we transitioned to bring your own rider events, just so the more of the people that compete in the bucking bull side of things, they like to bring the riders for the 3-year-olds. Because they just want a smaller guy because these bulls are still developing, and that gives them a little bit of an advantage to pick what guy's getting on them. So that's what they were wanting. So we kind of moved to that, but they've still been really good. We still get a lot of PBR guys that come get on. So they've been good.
What are the top 5 bulls that you have now that our listeners need to be watching for at the PBR events? What are their names?
Who are they, Addi?
Triple Lot, Haymaker, Blown Away, Mercy, and
In My Blood.
In My Blood, yeah.
Those are probably our top 5. And actually, Mercy, Haymaker, and Mercy are our 2 best ones. They're most of the time featured in the championship rounds. Haymaker.
I've seen those bulls. I was like, those bulls I have seen. I think even those bulls I think Haymaker was actually in a documentary that they did about the Brazilian bull riders like coming in and the disruptor that they've been. I think Haymaker was actually in that documentary.
I don't know. He may have been. I haven't seen that one, but I mean, I don't know. But yeah, Haymaker's, that's my wife's pride and joy. That was her calf from the day one, and he's not very big, but he's got some tricks to him. He right out of the chute, he really drops his whole body, and them guys don't last very long on him. So he's like, we looked up after Milwaukee, he's bucked off 4 of the top 5 warriors in the world standings, fast. So he's only been ridden twice in his career. He's 27-2. So wow. He's got a pretty phenomenal record, and he's got some tricks to him. Some the bull riders don't like drawing him or getting on him because he's pretty tricky. And then Mercy, he's one of our 5-year-olds. He's been on tour for 2 years now, and he's only been ridden 1 time. And the guy that rode him drew him last weekend in Milwaukee and bucked him off. And he's been his last 3 or 4 outs. He's been in the championship round, so he's really, I think he's the number 14 bull in the bull of the year standings right now. So he's been pretty special.
So tell us when you've got the judges out there that are judging the riders, and tell us how the scoring system works, because some of it's from the animal, correct, and then some of it's from the rider, and it's a combination thereof.
Yeah, it's 50 points for the bull, 50 points for the bull rider. So the best score is going to be 100. So anytime you're not anymore, you're going to win quite a bit. So, and there's usually at most of the bull rings, like at the PBRs, I think there's 4 judges, and they judge the bull 1 to 25 and the bull rider 1 to 25. So, for example, in most of the time, if you ride your bull, they're going to mark you over top of your bull. So if it's a 21.5 point bull and it's a 22.5 ride, that's going to be 45. So you're going to be 90. I think if my math added up or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So a 22 ride or a 22 bull with a 23 ride is 45. That's going to be 90 points. So it really, they look like if you're in complete control, they're going to mark you over your bull, or they're going to, if you're hanging upside down or barely make the whistle, they're going to, your ride score is going to be under what the bull score is.
Yeah, because a rider can have a great ride, but if the bull doesn't do what he's supposed to do, it really hurts the score, doesn't it?
Correct. And if the bull's really bad and you stay on, they're going to give you an option for a re-ride, and you can get on a different one.
Yeah.
And they're told what the bull is, and they decide from there. If it's one they think they can ride, they'll take the ride, or sometimes they'll, regardless, they're just going to keep their score and hope to get in the aggregate.
Now, I see you guys have quite a following on social media. So am I remembering this right? Like 342,000 followers?
On Facebook, yeah.
On Facebook, yeah. That's a lot of folks. So obviously you guys have garnered a lot of that through the attention that your bulls have gotten. I'm sure that Addi's awesome videos that she's doing with the bulls, that probably helps contribute to that as well. I'm sure it's fascinating for people to see that you can go up and hang out with the bulls, and you see them at an event, and they're just a completely different animal, no pun intended.
I really think what's really blew us up on social media is, I think, really the Addi and hard labor story, and it just really took off from there. And then when people see that, hey, hard labor was insured for a lot of money, and we decided not to collect our insurance check and to try to to save his life and just to keep him retired, even though he was no use to us, for making money. But because if he can't buck anymore, there's no revenue coming in from him. So us to say, you know what, this is different. For Addi's sake, we're not doing it, because that bull's part of our family. And I think that won a lot of people over. And then when they got to have an opportunity to really see we really try to share the behind the scenes, aspect of the bucking bull operation and how it works. And a lot of people are amazed, because when you go to PBR, when you show up there, you're there to watch. You see the finished product. When you go to a football game or a baseball game, you see the finished product. You see it. You don't see the behind the scenes. You don't see the hours and hours and years of work that we put in with our animals to get them to that level. And when we open our doors up for people to see through our social media, the behind the scenes, what we do out in the pasture, and the doctoring that handle them, when we, trim hooves, or we're doctor bulls, or we're running them through the buck and shoot and just training them. And when people can see that aspect of it, they're really amazed. Like, wow, we didn't realize that much was involved with bucking bulls or even ranching. So we try to share what other people don't, instead of just a finished product. Let's just show you behind the scenes, and let's just show you what it takes to get to the PBR and what you actually see on TV or see at the event.
Mm-hmm.
So, and people seem to really like it. And it's all, we don't do any fancy things with our effects, graphics, professional. We run our own social media accounts, and we just post just real and raw stuff. And if you like it, great. If not, well, sorry.
So you have to
there's a lot of people that like it.
Yeah. So Addi, you have to tell me about naming them, because I'm assuming naming of a bull is very important, because it has to have a certain toughness to it. But then you've got some that kind of have pretty sweet names. So tell me about naming all your bulls.
Well, some of them, like, they're picked out before they're born. Like, for example, my mom has a bull, How Priceless, and she's had that name picked out for him for 2 years. But like some of them are like based off personality, and like some of them we just name after songs or just really anything really.
Yeah.
Most of them are named like they hit the ground within a couple hours. Jenny and Addie, they've got to have a name for them.
Yep.
I'm all about, hey, let's save the really cool name because if they don't buck, we're wasting a name. So, but no, and it's always worked out. Like Jenny named Haymaker from day one. That was so the day he was born. She had that name ready, and it's worked out. I mean, obviously it doesn't always work, but for the most part, before they even see an arena or even before they've been weaned, most of them already have a name. So
how many events are you going to in a year's period of time?
Between the ABBI and the PBRs, I mean, we're gone, 2 to 3 weekends a month. I mean, I don't think we've only had, actually this year, I think we've only had 2 weekends off between going to the PBRs and to the ABBI fraternities. So, and I think we only have 1 weekend off through May right now between going to all the events. We're gone quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the time, we like for our PBR bulls, we don't like to buck them more than a couple times a month or a couple events a month. It's not really the bucking that hurts them; it's the traveling. So in a lot of like we just got back from Milwaukee, so our next event's going to be Palm Desert, California in 3 weeks, and then we'll take a week off and go to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So, I mean, most of the PBRs we go to are 14 to 20 hours, driving distance from our place. So there's a few that are closer, but the further they are, it's not really bull country. So we have the opportunity to take more bulls to make it worth us going to. So,
yeah.
Well, it's not like you're pulling your camper down the road where you can set it up and spend the night.
No,
you got a trailer load of bulls. I'm sure it is nonstop until you get there.
No, we won't haul our bulls more than 9 hours on the trailer going to an event without unloading them and letting them rest. So we pretty much know, or most of the time there's sale barns that let us lay over that are en route to the events. Like when we go to the California events, we'll lay over in Holbrook, Arizona, which is 9 hours from our place, and then usually they're anywhere from 5 to 8 hours from there, travel wise. So no, it's harder than bulls. We want to get them, because just the vibrating and the traveling and just the wear and tear on them, just being in that trailer, and then we got to let them, get out and eat, and because we like to feed at a specific time every single day, and so we try to leave. We try to time it. We leave early enough to get them unloaded. Where we can feed them when they need to be fed and let them rest, and get up early and then go on to the event. So, but no, we don't. We try to rest them and ease along as best we can. Now Milwaukee, we laid over in Missouri to get up there, and then but on the way home it was a Sunday event. So after they bucked Sunday, we got back to bull housing. We fed them. We took a 4 or 5 hour power nap, and we were loaded at 3 a.m. and drove straight home. We don't typically like to do that, but they're going to have 3 weeks off. So just like us, them bulls sleep and rest way better at home. So
yeah.
After the event, if they got enough time off, we'll come straight home. So, but when we went to Sacramento, California, that was 23 hours. So we didn't come straight home there. We actually laid over and then came in. So we try to do what's best for animals. Sometimes it's not very convenient for us, but we look out for what's best for them, and it's going to help, with their performance and their health.
So what's harder, being the guy that's riding the bulls or being the guy that's taking care of the bulls and getting them to the event to be ridden?
It's 100% harder on the bull riders, but yeah, no, there's lots of bulls out there, but it's for us, it's challenging just to have bulls, just to have bulls good enough to go, and really that can last and sustain the elite bull riders day in and day out. So it's not easy.
Yeah. Wow.
So how does everyone find you then? Tell us, website, social media, where can our listeners find you and follow you?
Everything is at Nothin But Try Ranch, nothing without a G. So we have Facebook's at Nothin But Try Ranch, and our Instagram is at Nothin But Try Ranch. And Addie's Instagram is
1814 hard labor, but it's 1814_hard labor.
So her and hard labor have 1814_hard labor. So, but usually when when we post on our main Instagram, we'll collaborate with Addi's Instagram page. She doesn't have Facebook, so. But nope, just search Nothin But Try Ranch. So.
Well, we will make sure to get those in the show notes so that people can just click and find you very easily. And
it was funny. We were in Milwaukee, and Addi texted me. She's like, I got like 50 new Instagram followers like within 5 minutes. I don't know what's going on. Well, we went back and watched the broadcast, and the guy that was doing the commentating was talking about Addi and her social media and her jumping on bulls and all this stuff. So people flocked to it. She's like, I don't know what's going on, but yeah, because she's in the stands and she didn't realize what they were talking about until after back to watch it. So it was pretty funny.
Addi, it's all of your awesomeness coming through, and everyone is seeing it.
Well, the social media, I am telling you, like for everybody who's listening, you really should go out and follow them because the reels are super fun. They really do a good job of showing the personalities of the bulls and what day-to-day life looks like when a bull is not at the PBR. And so I just really encourage you to follow Addi and follow the ranch and support what they're doing out there. This is typically the point of time where we do some trivia questions, but Addi already blew my first question. I thought I was being so clever.
That's one less that I have to get wrong.
So
Thanks, Addi.
So Addi already blew it by talking about Cool Whip, because that was my first question, is what bull has the most consecutive buck-offs? And it is indeed Cool Whip with 43. Addi, do you know who Cool Whip dethroned for the most, who was holding the record before Cool Whip took it over? Do you know?
It was Bushwhacker, but now Magic Potion passed Bushwhacker, but I think Cool Whip's record was 49 and like 2.
Yeah, I think Cool has been ridden twice now. Sandro Batista stopped his buck-off streak actually in Sacramento when we were there. So that stopped at 48, and actually Magic Potion just went to 46 straight buck-off. So there's a very good chance that Magic Potion is going to break that record.
Yeah, well, so that totally blew and saved you on one of these questions, Ron. So you can thank Addi.
I'm totally thanking Addi all the way today. Addi is my friend.
Now, this is going out of the bucking bull world just a little bit to encompass any bull anywhere. Would you guys like to guess what the most expensive bull ever sold for? What was the amount of money that the most expensive bull sold for?
Either in the rodeo circuit or outside of, just in general.
Any bull in the world. What is
I know it was not a rodeo bull. I'm sure
it was not a rodeo bull.
Sure
it was actually, it was an Angus bull.
I'm going to say 1.5 million.
Okay. Ron?
These cattle sell for just ridiculous numbers in a lot of these shows. I mean, it's just it's amazing to me. I'm probably going to follow Chad's lead on this. I'm going to go with say 1.8.
Okay. Well, Chad actually smoked you and nailed it right on the money with 1.5.
Bam.
Wow.
I don't know how they ever can recoup their kind of money, but that's a lot of money. So I don't know how they do it. Now, was that a show? Was that at a livestock show for the kids? One of them sales?
I didn't get into that much depth, but it was purchased by a ranch in Nebraska.
Interesting.
Wow. So, yeah, I'm with Chad. I don't know how you recoup your money on that. I don't know how you can justify that kind of a cost.
I know like at the Houston Livestock and Denver and all them shows, it's most of them big companies will buy the show steers from them kids at auction. Is pretty much, it's more of just a tax write-off for them. And But I know usually if you win the grand champion show steer or whatever, it's quite a bit of money. It's sometimes for them kids, it's life changing because I know the kids don't get all of it, but they get a chunk of it. It's still even a chunk's quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that works. I mean, semen sales, I guess, and breeding purposes. I don't know, but I'd love to sell one for 1.5 million. If you know anybody, that's a lot.
If anybody has 1.5 million to spend, Chad would like to speak with you.
And we can help you spend it.
Hey, if that's the case, I'm going to count in there. Contact me as well. I have something around this farm that we would be happy to sell for that.
Got a big fish on the wall.
There you go. There you go.
So,
So we can line that out as a bonus prize.
yeah. So, Addi, as we sign off today, what are you really excited about at these early stages of your career? What are some things that you're really looking forward to?
Just when I'm able to turn 18 and just be able to flank bulls in the PBR.
Yeah. Well, before that, you're going to turn 16 and you're going to get to help your dad drive. I'm sure he's really looking forward to that.
I'm looking for, well, actually, she turns 15 in April and she's going to get her farm license. So we're going to start practicing.
There we go. The dynamic duo.
23 hours from California. I sure wish she would have helped me drive. That's for sure.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
But she does a good job. She usually helps keep me up, her chats with me, when she's not sleeping. But if I get tired, I'll wake her up and make her talk to me.
There we go. Well, thank you to both of you for being on, and thank Jenny so much for helping to arrange it, and just wish you nothing but the very best. We'll just keep watching those reels, and Addi, it'll be really fun to see what you've got up your sleeve next.
Thanks.
All right. We appreciate y'all.
Thank you guys so much. Enjoyed the conversation.
Yep,
yes, very much. Thank you. Well, everybody, thank you again for joining in. We will put all of the contact information for Nothin But Try. You can follow Addi, follow him on social media. And of course, now you definitely know who you should be rooting for at the next PBR. So thank you to everybody, and we'll see you next time on the Ag Inspo podcast.
See you.
You've been listening to the Ag Inspo podcast with Rabou and Rena Striegel. Find Ag Inspo on Farm Journal's YouTube channel and anywhere you find your favorite podcasts. For more information about today's guest or the resources referenced today, please see the show notes listed below. Join us next time when we will meet another inspirational leader who has taken those small steps to bring about really big change.